and it was Zig and Zag were my two companions in the wood. Most of their doings were unseen. Even the eye of the raven did not know all the paths they might traverse. Into the woods, up the trees, to dismay the cougar, or to rattle the coyote, or to do whatever is needed. The owl must know what to speak. All the creatures in this fine wood have always worked together, and they always will. And tonight would simply be an opportunity, as it always is. An opportunity tonight for perhaps a Pleiadian to show. And the raven is on the sill, and the children are still. Perhaps they've said their prayers, perhaps they'd washed behind their ears, and perhaps the rustling they hear is not that of the raven. But if they've been good little kiddies, and I know they have, they should worry not, for the raven is very still. There were many types who would be here. The ceremony was invited to many. It was a grand ceremony of all time, the coronation of the moon. The end of an era, the beginning, or what some would say the age of Aquarius or peace or what have you. But it was indeed a new time had just begun. And Professor Quiglee had his promises, and he had his desires, and mostly he wanted to be famous as the man who saved the wood. The only problem was the wood was never in danger, and it never will. Nothing is stronger, nothing at all, than love that created the life, that sent the mother to the father for the light to give another night upon the children. And it is the dawning of this age that I, as the raven, am quite aware of all the dots and all the spots, as I was the watcher, and I always will. I will watch over these children, and even though the time is close and the battle is at hand, I am quite sure they will once again remember their true command. For you see, it was Zig and Zag that were the heroes in our last adventure, having chewed the wires in the laboratory, and all the rodents of every type participated, even the wary little bats. And the professor has scurried about to make repairs, but he has missed the portal, the golden opportunity, eons in the making, and the portal of the 13th had opened, and Professor Quiglee had missed his chance. But he was grasping ever still, and the moon was laughing, perhaps with pursed lips. Perhaps she was angry, and perhaps she was mostly sad. because Professor Quiglee only wanted to do exactly what we all do. He wanted the best for the children. And as the raven, we at least had that much to agree. It was not long that I sensed from the north I would have a visitor. The Pleiadians, most likely. All in all, a perfectly good lot. And as the watcher, before I became the raven, I knew very well of their deeds. And some were noble, and some were not. And some were selfish, and some were fraught. And the ones that we should encounter, well, there's no telling what sort they might be. One should always hope for the best, I should say. And as the raven, I always do. My friends always arrive, and they heed my call. And I would be calling for Zig and Zag, the most dependable of them all. It was not just Professor Quiglee and his laboratory that we had recently silenced in our last episodes. If you are new to our story, I am the raven, and I am here to watch after some very important children. You see, the children had lost their way, and as the watcher, I could do nothing to deter, only to observe and watch the same mistakes and the same forgetful command, and they have forgotten to love in all of their doing and all of their getting. They have become spiteful to each other. Not all of them, but the few who had remembered the flame of love must always be eternal in the wood, especially in the land of the Blue Orb. There were some who did not forget, and one of them was named Zig, another Zag. Perhaps as the raven I will see them in my journeys, into my forays, into wherever the Blue Orb has commanded the raven to go. You see, it's not just one little job here and one there. We've got to get to all the children of the wood, and the wood must remember. It must remember to love. And that was the one thing. And Professor Quiglee was wanting more, because it was missing. The equation was not complete. He forgot to love, and his creation to save the planet would have destroyed it. And so we are back to one and none. But the wood has always provided for its child, as it will amply demonstrate in all of our episodes. For it is not a hard lesson to learn. One simply has to pay attention. As the raven, I always do. But as the watcher, I came as the raven to do what I can. And I would need some assistance. My first source was the woodsman. Each wood has a guardian, and he is this wood's guardian, whether he knows it or not. Even he has forgotten all the lessons that he had already learned. So it was a matter of remembering, and not so much doing of anything, except that very thing, that we must not forget to love each other, even as we fight the very same thing. And fight we do, for the Pleiadians had arrived, and the portal had passed. The 13th was now in session, and the rules were not the same. And as the raven, I found this to be an interesting turn to our little game. But certainly the night was young, and I fully expected to see a Pleiadian or two as I traversed this very lovely emerald wood. And as the raven, I shall fly into the night. And if I should be upon the sill, it should make you not nervous, as the raven is very still. And so tonight's story took us into the emerald fields of the enchanted wood, and the guardians in this very spot. Surely someone would know if there was a Pleiadian about. And as the raven, I should do my investigations as I sense our little battle with Professor Quiglee has only taken a slight turn. But as the raven, I can traverse in places that the man's eye may not conceive. Or perhaps he can. As the raven, I do what I can. And tonight, I was quite sure all of our work in regards to the laboratory was not in vain. However, I would have to fly somewhat to the south before the moon does her turn. Up ahead, in the sky, there was some semblance of her glory, although shrouded somewhat. We still had a bit of time before the dawn, and as the raven, I am always aware of the tick of the clock. Into the wee hours, I watch, while you are dreaming of lovely villages to plunder asunder. The raven lies on the sill, doing what he must. Ever still lies the raven. And tonight, the Pleiadians will most likely have a cup of tea. Perhaps others, it portended to be a very busy night, and as the raven, I was intent on watching this very spot. As the raven, I was very, very still. Just as I had been observing the laboratory of Professor Quiglee, with whom we had just vanquished for the night on the coronation of the 13th portal. It was a very special night. But the professor certainly would not be deterred. Upon our victory over Professor Quiglee, and it was indeed a victory, as many of us worked together for a goal. But he would not be deterred. Angry at missing out on the 13th portal's opportunity, most likely he would seek some other form of assistance other than the natural realm that had just passed its golden opportunity. And the waves of energy that he craved, and the power that he had come to love, under the claim of trying to feed these very children with whom he was destroying their very wood, their very homes. They were becoming small and forgetting how large they were, and forgot that size is not always the measure of the fight. But certainly there are those who disagree. And that is all the sport of the matter, I suppose. And as the raven, I knew the night was still very young. I am quite sure Professor Quiglee has by now, if he has not already contacted the wizard, the one who could give him his go. The wizard could hand it to him in a lick, but the wizard pays no price. Of course, the wizard always extracts his price, and it is always high, and he always wins. And when you deal with him, you are not being very wise. So far, the professor has only been foolish. Let him not be unwise as well. He still had time to make the wise choice. And the Blue Orb was not waiting for anyone's decisions, for the ceremony had begun. With or without, within, the party had begun. The coronation was going perfectly as scheduled. And we should not forget that on our journeys tonight, as the moon will be of great assistance as it always is. As she is the keeper of the light until the morn. And we should be aware of whatever images we present, for she records them all, for she is the keeper of the night. And the night had just begun. I was quite sure we should have some company along the way.